coaches. My name is Kayla Hrindak from Louisville in the Canton District. I hope that this video helps you teach Congress to your students. If you have any questions, please feel free to email me. You can find my email address on the legislation templates on the OSDA Congress website. Today, we're going to run an example Congress session from beginning to end. Well, sort of, but we will only use one piece of legislation. I hope you find this helpful and informative.
Well, good morning, students. My name is Jake, and I'm going to be your parliamentarian. For those of you who don't know, a parliamentarian is the adult who knows the rules of congressional debate. They're usually either a former coach, competitor, or someone who's seen enough rounds to know what's going on. But first, we're going to take nominations for presiding officer and set the docket. Are there any nominees for presiding officer?
I nominate Representative Demo.
I nominate Representative Frazier.
Okay, and then at this point, we would take a vote between our two nominees, and the winner of this election is Representative Martin.
Yay.
Frazier.
Okay.
Okay, and then at this point, now that we have a presiding officer, we will set the docket. Normally, we'll have older students or more experienced competitors set the order of the legislation that they'll be speaking on. But because we're only dealing with one today, we will go ahead and just set it as it stands. So,
There are 4 motions that need to be made in order to start the chamber. Motion to vote by placard, motion to amend the rules and allow for open chamber, motion to set docket as is, and motion to begin debate. Motion to vote by placard allows students to use their name card to vote rather than standing up. Motion for open chamber allows students to respectfully come and go from the chamber while it is in session.
We will now begin debate with the first bill, a bill to terminate security aid to Azerbaijan. I will now seek a first affirmation speech. Anybody with such speech, please rise now. Representative Gray, you have the floor.
I thank the chair. Hello, I'm Representative Gray, seat number 1, speaking for the first time today, first time this session. I'll begin when my judges, parliamentarian, and presiding officer are ready. I'll begin. Oil, something the U.S. loves. We are well acquainted with our oil and we use it often. Now, it was no surprise to me today when I saw the topic of this current piece of legislation was Azerbaijan, a small country located in the Caucasus, a region located between the Black and Caspian Sea. Now, this is significant because the Caucasus is well known for their oil supply. So of course it's going to be a hot topic of debate for the U.S. Now, because of this, I'll circle around my 2 main points of contention. First, why there's no reason for us to be there, and second, why we cannot be there by law. Now, starting with my first contention, why there's no reason for us to be in Azerbaijan. There is no reason for us to be there. Azerbaijan had a conflict between Armenia and Azerbaijan, and it was the main reason we sent security aid to Azerbaijan. Although we are still sending that aid, that conflict ended November 10th, 2020, when Russia brokered a ceasefire between the 2 countries. Now, there are currently Russian troops in Azerbaijan doing peacekeeping operations, making sure that neither country attacks either way and breaks the ceasefire. So why is there a reason for us to be sending security funding to a country that is highly protected by a very large country such as Russia? Now, moving on to my second point of contention, why we cannot be there. According to the Institute of American Studies, Section 907 of the Freedom Support Act prohibits assistance to Azerbaijan unless it is, quote, important to Azerbaijan's border security and will not undermine or hamper against efforts to negotiate a peaceful stalemate between Armenia and Azerbaijan, only to be used as an offensive purposes against Armenia. Now, if we are no longer in this conflict, how can we possibly keep sending security aid when we are not even in this conflict and there is no war or no current fighting with Armenia between Azerbaijan and Armenia? We should not be sending security aid there when there is no conflict going on and it is being protected by Russia. There is absolutely no reason for us to be sending security aid to Azerbaijan when there is no current conflict and there are peacekeeping forces sent by Russia. The only reason we are currently there is because of their oil supplies and the economic benefit of having our security aid in a country such as Azerbaijan that is so hot. Now, for those two points of contention, I must insist that we affirm a bill to terminate security aid to Azerbaijan. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Gray, for your speech of 2 minutes and 40 seconds. Seeing as that was our first speech and affirmation, I will now hold a 2-minute questioning period. Anybody with such questions may rise now. Representative Kayla.
Are you saying that Azerbaijan has had no benefits to the United States being in their country?
Well, we are not currently necessarily in the country apart from some citizens that may be there.
Okay.
But I'm saying that we have no reason to send aid there when there is no reason for aid to be
Okay,
sent.
so what technically defines as aid? Does this piece of legislation define what aid is?
Well, yes, it did not specifically define aid, but it is referring to the aid that is being sent by the U.S. Being the millions of dollars that we are sending aid.
Okay, so you're referring to the hundreds of $1 million that we're sending to Azerbaijan. Correct?
Representative, your 30-second question block has ended. Any other representatives with questions may rise now. Seeing as there are no other representatives, you may go forward.
Okay, continuing with what I'm saying. So you're referring to the hundreds of $1 million that have been sent by the United States to Azerbaijan, correct?
Yes, Representative.
So you're saying that has had no benefit to Azerbaijan or its political climate whatsoever, and that we should just stop sending that.
I'm not saying it's had no benefit. I'm saying by U.S. law that we have set forth before any of this took place, we cannot legally by U.S. law be sending forces to Azerbaijan.
We're not, but according to your...
or aid of any sort.
Okay, so we can't send forces and we can't send aid because we're in no current conflict.
Any other representatives with questions that may rise? Nope. Okay. You have another.
Okay, so you're saying that we can't send aid or soldiers for foreign aid. Sorry, you're saying that we can't send that because we're in no current conflict, correct?
I'm saying because Azerbaijan is in no current conflict and because it is set forth by the Freedom
So
Support
just
Act.
because it's being occupied by another peacemaking country.
Representative, this directly goes against law we have set in place many years ago. We cannot go against law we have set forth many years ago unless you would be willing to repeal it, and we have no option but to pass this act.
Okay.
The first affirmative and first negative speeches get 2 minutes of questioning, while all remaining speeches get 1 minute. Each student called on has 30 seconds to ask questions, and then it will go on to the next student. Or, as you saw in this example, the student may continue asking questions if no one else stands to ask.
Thank you, Representative Gray, for your time. You may now take your seat.
I thank the chair.
Seeing as that was our first speech in affirmation, the chair will be seeking for our first speech in negation. Anybody with such a speech, please rise now. Representative Kayla, you have the floor.
I thank the chair. Hello, my name is Representative Capo. I'm speaking for the first time this session, first time today. And if I have the approval of everybody within the room, I will begin. Alright, perfect. Then I will begin starting now. Protecting lives should be the priority of the American government, whether it's the lives of the citizens within their own country or the lives of the citizens of another country thousands of miles away. Lives should be our most important value. This is why I am negating the legislation today, for 2 key reasons. First, our position in Azerbaijan is a key role player in counterterrorism. And secondly, Azerbaijan can play a key role in spreading equality and democracy within the Middle East. First, our position in Azerbaijan is a key role player in counterterrorism. According to Dooley 18, quote, Azerbaijan has confirmed commitment to combating terrorism. The country is a member of several international organizations, such as Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe, and the Organization for Islamic Cooperation. The collaborative work for Azerbaijan's state security forces and foreign intelligence services have made sizable contributions to the international community's efforts to combat terrorism, end quote. This is significant for 2 key reasons. First, it solidifies the importance of the U.S. sending foreign aid, foreign aid, we'll use that word, to Azerbaijan, because it's a key role player in counterterrorism. If the United States is going to keep on sending aid to Azerbaijan, we are thus inherently fighting terrorism within Middle Eastern countries. Thus, we should keep on sending that foreign aid. But secondly, and more importantly, it shows how Azerbaijan is a key role in fighting against terrorism in general. I already practically spoke on those ideas, but both because of geopolitics and because of governmental reasons, this is why we must negate to keep on fighting against terrorism. Secondly, Azerbaijan can play a key role in spreading equality and democracy within the Middle East. According, again, to Dooley 18, quote, as a Muslim-majority country with a history of religious tolerance, Azerbaijan could be a model for countries in the region. Azerbaijan shares a border with both Russia and Iran. If Azerbaijan can successfully become a market economy, perhaps it can provide a model for similar countries within the region. End quote. This has one key impact. If we continue aiding Azerbaijan, we can hopefully set an example within the Middle East. Hopefully we can start setting an example of democracy and equality within the Middle East, and therefore motivating other countries to pick up the same ideals and pick up hopefully the same government system. This could solve a couple of key issues, such as the infighting that has been happening within the Middle East for years now. So therefore, if we negate this and keep on sending aid to Azerbaijan, hopefully we will be able to set a better example within the Middle East. So, to conclude, we must negate today for two key reasons. First, because the geopolitical location in Azerbaijan is critical to fighting against terrorism. And secondly, we need to create an example of a functional government within the Middle East, and Azerbaijan is the key to that. Therefore, we must negate this legislation.
Thank you, Representative, for your speech of exactly 3 minutes. Seeing as that was our first speech in negation, we will be holding a 2-minute questioning period. Any representatives with such questions may rise now. Representative Stewart.
Representative, is it possible to put a dollar amount on the safety of American citizens?
No, absolutely not. But by continuing sending this funding to Azerbaijan, we will thus inherently be protecting their citizens, because that funding is hopefully going to go towards things such as fighting against terrorism.
Representative Gray.
I thank the chair. Representative, you're talking about protecting lives. How can we be protecting lives by sending security aid if there is no possible conflict and all the possible conflict is being snuffed out by Russian forces?
Because it's not just going to stop conflicts within Azerbaijan and the Armenian conflict, but hopefully, as I spoke on in my second convention, it's going to set an example within the Middle East to hopefully stop more conflicts within the Middle East.
But why do they need that money if Russian forces are preventing the conflict?
Because again, it's not just setting an example for Azerbaijan in the Armenian conflict, but hopefully it's going to be setting more examples across the Middle East as well. That money is going to help with setting that example, and hopefully with Azerbaijan becoming a more democratic country.
I thank the chair.
Does any other representatives have questions for the speaker? Nope. The chair will absorb that last minute of questioning time then. Thank you, Representative Capo. You may take your seat. Do we have any motions?
Motion?
Motion recognized.
Motion for a 5-minute recess?
All in affirmation? Yeah.
Second.
Any in negation? Nope. Seeing as there was a 1 majority for affirmation, the chair will hold a 5-minute a 5-minute recess. We'll be back in 5.
At the end of each hour, students will take a 5 to 10 minute recess in order to use the restroom, get a drink, and switch presiding officers. This is a very brief period of time that is used strictly for these types of things. We will now resume debate and move on with our next affirmative speech.
Seeing as 5 minutes have passed, our debate will begin now. Seeing as we have had our first speech in negation, the chair is looking for a second speech in affirmation. And any representatives with such a speech, please rise now. Representative Daima.
Okay, sure. Hello, my name is Representative Tioma. This is my first time speaking today, first time in this session. I come all the way from seat number 3. So, as I get a thumbs up from my PO and my parley, I shall begin. Azerbaijan is a tricky country. The reason for this being, they've been in conflict with Armenia for as long as anyone can think. But, is it really the US's business to be involved? In this, isn't really what the U.S. is meant to do. We are not an international police force, but instead, we are simply a country trying to keep terrorist attacks from happening. But by sending aid to Azerbaijan, this is not the way we do it. We should cancel all security aid to Azerbaijan for the following 2 points. One being they are self-sufficient, and 2, it is simply a waste of U.S. resources. My first point being they are already self-sufficient. The current government of Azerbaijan is self-sufficient and does not require aid. According to World Bank from just last year, 2020, they're seeing economic increases and budget increases of things such as education, medicine, their GDP is on the rise, and they've seen many other economic victories. These coming in areas such as their industry and their road networks. This is strictly coming from domestic product, not coming from the U.S. security aid, which is no longer needed, as previously stated by Representative Gray, Russian forces keeping the peace. So U.S. security aid, honestly, is just wasting U.S. resources, which I will get into later. Furthermore, according to Azertak from just this year, which is the official Azerbaijani news source, their state-sponsored source, they are self-sufficient. If they claim to be self-sufficient, why should we continue giving them aid? If they say they can take care of themselves, why furtherly push ourselves in and enforce our opinions with our security aid, which is no longer needed, as again, they have stated themselves they are self-sufficient. The reason they are so self-sufficient is because they sit on large deposits of natural gas and oil, which is something that is in short supply for the world with the recent COVID pandemic. These resources, which will not be going away anytime soon, will only provide them with infinite income in the future. Next, to my next point, it's the waste of U.S. resources. The U.S. only has so much to give. And as a well-known fact, we are in ridiculous amounts of debt. So why should we continue giving money? According to U.S. aid from 2020, we gave around $1.7 billion in total to Azerbaijan. This number is astronomically high. And as we're coming towards the end of 2021, we are only seeing it could go on to almost $2 billion in aid. This is something that could be way better spent helping the U.S. people than some foreign nation who, again, is already self-sufficient. So why should we continue to pump funds into them when they can take care of themselves? Furthermore, according to Carnegie, we are wasting resources. Because they already have Russian peacekeeping troops, we have no reason to truly be in Azerbaijan other than, again, as previously stated, their natural resources. So as I come to a close today, my fellow representatives, we should affirm this bill because they are self-sufficient enough to take care of themselves and we are simply wasting resources. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Dioma, for your speech of 3 minutes and 13 seconds. Seeing as that was our second speech and affirmation, the chair will be holding a mandatory 1-minute questioning period. Any representatives with such questions, please rise now. Representative Baxter.
Okay, so Representative, you talk about economic increases within the country, but how do those specific economic increases help improve their security?
When improving their security, you also have to look at the other aspects of their country, because if they have poor education and poor healthcare, all we are going to see is things fall into disarray and groups rise up more because they are looking for ways to better the country. So
but how does that improve the combat to terrorism around their borders?
So as their country improves, we can see improvements in technology, and as I mentioned already, there's Russian peacekeeping forces which are keeping other terrorist groups.
Representative Dioma, you can either choose to continue answering or move on to Representative.
I'll move on to Representative Kayla.
Representative Capo.
Okay, so in your second contention, you're talking about the fact that, like, if I'm correct, the money that we're sending there is practically useless because we could be using it to save our own lives rather than saving other lives in a foreign country, correct?
Correct.
So are you putting a certain amount of money on lives that could possibly be saved internationally?
What I'm doing is not putting a number on international lives, but instead saying this money could be spent better elsewhere.
So are you weighing two different lives against each other because one of them is a country that we currently live in and the other one is a country that is...
Representative Dioma, you can either choose to continue his question and answer it, or you may take your seat.
I will take my seat. Thank you.
Seeing as that was our second speech and affirmation, the chair will be seeking a second speech in negation. Any representatives with such a speech may rise now. Representative Baxter.
I think the chair. Hello, I'm Representative Baxter. This is my first time speaking today and first time in this chamber. Once I get a thumbs up from both PO and Parley, I shall begin. Okay. Azerbaijan has confirmed commitment to combating terrorism. The collaborative work of Azerbaijan's state security forces and the Foreign Intelligence Service has made sizable contributions to the international community's efforts to combat terrorism. If we decide to affirm today, we'll be losing what relations we have with them and thus losing all counterterrorism support we have. My first point of contention, will we lose counterterrorism support around their borders? Then I'll be addressing the benefits that we will be losing. First, U.S. government assistance to Azerbaijan aims to improve Azerbaijan's capacity to deal with security threats, increase and diversify economic development, and promote independent institutions and civil society. According to the U.S. Department of State in 2019, the Azerbaijan government actively works to deter, detect, and defeat terrorist efforts to move people, money, and materials across its land into maritime borders within the South Caucasus. Azerbaijan law enforcement and security services conducted operations to disrupt and prevent terrorist attacks, arrested and prosecuted suspected terrorists, and prosecuted returning Azerbaijanis suspected of joining, financing terrorist groups, and fighting outside Azerbaijan, end quote. In order to sustain the ability to fight terrorism around its borders and have positive effects between the border enforcement, we must negate. Secondly, as Congress, we are elected for the first and foremost responsibility of serving those who elected us. Moving foreign aid directly hurts U.S. jobs and sets a precedent on the U.S. turning their back on proven allies. As Joanna Dooley said in late 2018 in the Borgen Project article, quote, Azerbaijan purchases American services. In 2010, Azerbaijan signed a $1 billion contract purchasing 8 civilian airplanes from American Boeing Company. This contract supported 11,000 American jobs. That same year, seeking to create its first communications satellite, Azerbaijan signed another contract with the Orbital Science Corporations in Virginia. The $205.3 million contract created 1,500 American jobs, end quote. This should prove that if we're to terminate security, we should expect a decrease in American jobs and thus lose support from our citizens, and thus losing support from Azerbaijan itself. To conclude, there are 2 key points of why we need to negate this bill. First, we can see that U.S. government assistance to Azerbaijan aims to improve counterterrorism and protect the country as a whole. If we terminate aid, we should expect more terrorist actions in the Middle East. Secondly, we should expect to lose American jobs as well as the support of Azerbaijan. It is imperative that we negate this bill to ensure that we continue to support counterterrorism actions in the Middle East and continue to utilize the benefits they share with us. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Baxter, for your speech of 2 minutes and 32 seconds. Seeing as that was our second speech in engagement, the chair will be holding a mandatory 1-minute questioning period. Any representatives with such questions may rise now. Representative Dion.
How can you confidently say that by us withdrawing aid that we will see more terrorist actions?
We can see that although as you say in your speech, that they're a self-sustaining country, in the past, our support has specifically helped them to stop these terrorist actions through their borders. So if we can infer that if we remove our aid, we could see that it would happen more often and more effectively.
Representative Gray, and if no other representatives would like to ask questions, you can have the other 40 seconds remaining.
I thank the chair. So, Representative, what you're saying is we must effectively keep bribing this country with security money to keep them on our side so that way we can get better deals with them in the future,
We're
such
not
as oil.
bribing the country.
Then why are we still sending them, as I stated in my speech, when we literally should not be sending them money by U.S. law?
What do you mean by that?
As I stated in my speech, according to the Freedom Support Act, we are not allowed to be sending security aid to Azerbaijan by U.S. law.
Okay, but we're still not bribing the country. We're there to help them effectively, which
I'm sorry, Representative, as you said in your speech, we are specifically sending them money to gain relations with them.
we're sending the money to be able to help them, not specifically relations. That is a benefit within them.
I thank the chair.
You can either choose to go on or you can
I will take my seat. I thank the chair.
Thank you, Representative Baxter, for your time. Do we have any motions?
Motion?
Representative Gray?
Motion to table this piece of legislation?
Any seconds?
Second.
Any negation? Oh, great. Seeing as there was negation, we will have to vote. All those who second the piece of legislation, please raise your placards. No. I see 4. Okay. All those who would not wish to table this piece of legislation, please raise your placards now. 2. Seeing as the majority would like us to vote on this piece of legislation, we will now vote on all the pieces of legislation. All those who wish to see this bill pass, please raise your placard now. 3. All those who wish to see this bill to fail, please raise your placards now. 3. Seeing as there is, it's never happened before. Seeing as this is a tie.
In the event of a tie, because you need a majority of votes in order to pass legislation, it fails.
Fails. Okay.
At
Seeing
the end,
as we've had an even amount of voters, this piece of legislation fails.
Motion.
Isaiah.
Motion to call for orders of the day.
Any seconds? Any objections? That's the order. Representative. Okay. Seeing as there was an objection, we will have to take a vote. All those who wish to move to orders of the day, please raise your placard now. Seeing as it's unanimous, we will now move on to orders of the day.
Motion.
Representative.
Motion and debate.
Any seconds?
Second.
Any objections? Nope. Okay. We are adjourned.
all right, as you can see at the end of each piece of legislation, you can either vote on the legislation or table the piece of legislation. If it's tabled, you can come back to that piece of legislation later in the session. If the chamber opts to vote on the piece of legislation, you cannot revisit it during that session. And then you also saw at the end here the activities that have to happen in order to properly close the session. You have to motion for orders of the day and go through those, as well as motion to adjourn. I hope that this video has helped you understand how to be part of a Congress chamber. If you have any questions, again, please feel free to reach out.